My name is Penelope Lee. I'm a member of the DAC Centre staff and also the Education and Outreach Officer of the Centre for the History of Emotions. I'm speaking here from the DAC Centre. As part of the Fire Stories conference, I was approached by Grace Moore, the convener, to pull together a body of work from a much larger collection that we have here in the Cunningham DAC's collection. And it has been a body of work that's been amassed over 2 years, starting in 2011, that focuses on artwork that's been generated from the 2009 Victorian bushfires. The works are a combination of works made by children from the Yarra Glen Primary School, as well as individuals, both adults and young people, who have created work personally and in private in response to the bushfires. The works now amassed are over 200 works, and they tell very clearly of the trauma and the direct experience the fires have had on their lives. If we look at the body of work from Yarra Glen, of which we have 170, the works were made immediately after the bushfires. They were facilitated, though not directed, by a teacher at Yarra Glen Primary School. She was the art teacher who pretty much opened her classroom following the bushfire on the Sunday, and this was the Monday when parents were arriving and bringing their children to the school, dazed, perplexed, wondering what to do, and they felt that the school could provide safety for their children. So they arrived at the school, and then at that point they were in the care of the teachers. They equally were traumatised by what was going on because they were local residents, and the school and their homes were enveloped in flames, and so this was evidenced by the large plumes of dark clouds that surrounded the school. So the students were given free range in the art room, and at the time all classes sort of came together, all ages came together. They were not just school students from Yarra Glen, but also from the local schools of Talangi. And they just put marks and gestures on paper that were describing their most immediate lived experience, that being the bushfire of the day before. So it's a very raw collection of works that are very explicit, tell of big plumes of flames enveloping their homes, damaging property, losing animals and livestock from their local farms. It also tells a loss of their material world, so their homes and their property being completely ravaged by this apocalyptic sort of experience that they had never bared witness to before. What you see struggling in the work is them trying to make sense or trying to reconstruct that experience, and creating this work was obviously of great value in that they could give form and shape to that experience and could communicate it with others. While the work was being made, the teachers facilitated and openly encouraged students to talk to one another, though they strongly discouraged that they speak about any hearsay and just keep to facts, so that children around listening to one another would not be frightened by other possible devastation that was happening at the time. Also part of the Fire Story pop-up exhibition, I've pulled together the works of Ursula and Werner Theinart. These works offer quite a different insight in that these two people stayed on their property and fought the fires directly. So they were in and amongst it all. They smelt it, they saw it, they were threatened directly. Their lives were directly threatened by it. There was a significant loss of property. They were able to salvage much of their home through drawing water from their pool, but otherwise everything around them was completely destroyed. They've often been described as the lucky ones in that they didn't have to leave their property and they could live in the salvaged part of their home. But I think on reflection they have spoken about the difficulties of staying in a burnt environment and how foreign and strange and dislocating it can be. It also creates a certain tension, I suspect, with local people in that some people, like their neighbours, randomly lost their home where they didn't. and what it means to have a home in comparison to your friends and your local neighbours. In Werner's work, he talks a lot about the constructing of community, where the visual nuances of his work pull together, and he creates almost a kaleidoscope of repetition. This interconnectivity between the patterns that he creates in his work is suggestive of the relationship between people and either the dislocating of a community or the fracturing of a community or the bringing together of a community. With Ursula's work, she painted the landscape in its burnt state. She speaks a lot about the spirituality and the period in this strange landscape after the fire and how it affected her and her psyche. I don't think they were frightened by what was going on around them, but they were obviously affected, and so much so that there came a point a couple of years after the fire that they decided to leave the property and move down near the coast and start again. The other work that's in this pop-up show is a work by Julie Goodwin, and Julie is an artist that's already represented in the Dax Centre. She had an experience of the fire where she was travelling to Warragul to her nephew's 21st, going to collect her parents at Nearham South, and saw large, overwhelming, monstrous plumes of smoke surrounding her as she drove this straight road. She describes being somewhat mesmerised by them, in that they were so big and quite beautiful in their texture and colours that as a visual artist, it just stopped her in her tracks. Obviously there was the threat, but not being able to process really what she was seeing at the time, she didn't probably understand the ominous nature of this threat. She took refuge for 24 hours with her family, and it wasn't until the next day that they were able to leave. These images haunted her for a long period of time, and subsequently she made a body of large works, quite different from the other works we have in the collection. And these large works tell of this particular time. She felt that she was becoming totally obsessed with these plumes, these monstrous plumes, and as a consequence felt that she needed to exercise or try and anticipate, I suppose, their recurrent theme that kept coming up, but that she wanted to contain it by drawing it. She's always found the process of art very helpful in that way. So using watercolours, which again was quite a shift from her practice, she made very large works that span up to 3 metres by 2, telling of these times. So why do we collect these works in the Dax Centre, and why have we brought them together with the fire stories? I think what's been raised over the number of speakers at the fire stories is the idea that, or the frequency in which the creative tools have been used to describe the lived experience with fire. I mean, obviously fire can be romanticised, and our relationship with fire in the north is very different from our fire relationship in the southern hemisphere. It is one that can obliterate our landscapes, can threaten our lives. And it is the works of the bushfire collection at the Dax Centre which I suppose reinforces these ideas. The creativity is really important in terms of a process of translating or reconstructing trauma, of naming it, of confronting it. I mean, I think what's really interesting with this work is that after a disaster like a bushfire, and they're going to become more recurrent as we know this, is that it can often enable a community not just to come together, but also to express the emotions that they have felt. It's very hard to put words to an experience which is foreign to somebody. In many people's life, they will never experience a fire. For the few that do, and maybe experience it more than once, to put words to such a disastrous, unfamiliar thing is a really difficult thing. So to use a medium with art, it can be embraced by all, and it can convey messages and meaning. So it's a really important tool that is not happening just by chance, it's happening for a reason, and people need to communicate these emotions and to cathartic and exorcise these emotions. The benefit for the people who view them is that hopefully we develop an understanding and an empathy towards those people's experiences, and that in itself, I suppose, will keep us in check, that we too have to take responsibility, or we're part of this equation too. It's not just those people who live a long way away, it's us that contribute to their survival too.